The AFC North is one of the most entertaining divisions in football, intense rivalries, really good, consistent teams, and a lot of exciting players. Today we're going to be going through every single position group, ranking how these four teams stack up against one another, who has the best roster, going through each of these four teams and seeing how they stack up. Let's just go ahead and get right into it, and it's starting with the quarterback position. This is probably the hardest decision for me on the entire list. Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson are two of the four best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think you really genuinely could stack it up either way. I think Joe Burrow has the most elite processing and accuracy of anyone in the NFL. He's done amazing things without, a defense, without an offensive line, but he has great playmakers. Lamar Jackson has a great infrastructure. He has a great coach around him, has a good offensive line, good playmakers, great running back, but he's also one of the most athletic, freaky guys that we've seen in the NFL. So genuinely, you could kind of put it either way. I think that, whatever fan base I don't put at number one is going to probably think that they should be at number one. I do think that Joe Burrow has just proven that he can do a little bit more with less. I do think that the offensive line has been a train wreck in front of him. I do think that his coaching doesn't help him out as much as Lamar Jackson does. There's plenty that he has going for him with his great wide receivers. Really, either way you stack it up, I could totally understand the argument. But Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson are the 1-2 in this division, whatever order you stack it up. When you look up the backups as well, Jake Browning did play well a couple years ago when he had to come in. Cooper Rush is the backup for the Ravens. So pretty comparable for those two guys as well. So really not going to have a major edge either way. So we're just going Bengals and then Ravens, but I would totally be fine if you switched it. It's just kind of personal preference. Then we're going with the Steelers up next. News that they just signed Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Rodgers is this elite quarterback at this point in his career. And I do think that, there's some locker room stuff that is certainly a question mark as well. But I do think that when he is on the field, he's still a decent quarterback. He's not this elite guy like he once was, but he's still accurate. He can process defenses. He's not quite as mobile or doesn't have as quite a big arm as he used to, but he's still a guy that can operate an offense. I think he's the best quarterback the Steelers have had since Roethlisberger probably. That's not saying a whole lot because Pickett was terrible. The guys they had last year just were not working, Russ or Justin Fields as well. And I don't think Rodgers is going to be this great quarterback, but I do think he brings a little bit of upside to the Steelers quarterback room, especially compared to what they were going into this past week with Mason Rudolph as the starter. It's a major upgrade, at least, over that. And then the Cleveland Browns at number 4, just a four-way quarterback battle between Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, and then the two rookie quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel, their third-round pick, Shedeur Sanders, their fifth-round pick. I wouldn't be at all surprised if 2, 3, maybe even 4 of those quarterbacks at least get to start a game at some point this year. I think Stefanski's going to have his work cut out for him, determining who's going to be the guy for this offense. Regardless, I think they're clearly number 4, unless one of these rookie quarterbacks really takes a giant step. That's just to be determined, so we can't really rank them any higher than number 4 here. And number 1 for the running backs, I think this is easily the Baltimore Ravens. Derrick Henry, even though he is getting up there in age, he's still incredibly productive. He's a really good power back. They spelled him a little bit more than I think he has in the past, and I think that helped him. I think Justice Hill is a decent backup, kind of third down option as well. He's a decent receiver, so he can come in, spell Derrick Henry. At some point, Henry is going to slow down, but he didn't look like it at all last year, really. So you got to continue to rank them number 1 in that category until proven otherwise at this point. At number 2, I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown, once he finally got the full-time starting running back role, was excellent for this team. Really became a really good receiving back as well. He was a great check down option for Joe Burrow. I think he just runs 100 miles an hour, runs like he's angry at the ground. I think he's just great at breaking tackles, making guys miss in the open field. He does need to continue to make sure he's not fumbling. That was his kind of number 1 thing at Illinois, and it popped up a little bit more towards the end of last season, but I think he's a really good young running back. Then you have some other guys as depth. You drafted Taj Brooks in the 6th round, who I did like. He was very productive out of Texas Tech. Zach Moss is coming back, kind of came back on a restructured contract. Samaje Perine back in Cincinnati as well. He's a good pass-protecting third down back. So you have some guys here. Really, though, Chase Brown and the emergence of his talent is really why they rank at number 2 here. Then at number 3, going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't really mind them letting Najee Harris go. I don't think that he was ever that great. I think he was more of a volume running back than an efficient runner. They didn't help him out a ton with their run blocking and kind of the scheme as well, but I do think that you're really not losing much by, instead moving towards Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, that I think was a really nice selection for them in the third round. Jaylen Warren is a great change of pace back. I've always kind of liked Jaylen Warren's game. He's tough to bring down. He's really good and elusive in the open field. So I think you've got some nice guys there. Caleb Johnson's not established, but I do think he was incredibly productive in the Big Ten. That's going to translate in this AFC North type of offense. So I think that this running back room will be really good for the Steelers. It's just kind of to be determined with Caleb Johnson. He's got to show it at the NFL level. And then the Cleveland Browns, once again, at number 4 here. This could be a pretty decent room. You're moving on from Nick Chubb. He still hasn't signed, and he just didn't look like the same kind of guy, unfortunately, after his injuries. So kind of turn over a new stone here. You have Jerome Ford still, who is decent, but he's not, a starting caliber running back. Really what you're getting excited about is Quinshon Judkins, who stays in Ohio, being drafted from Ohio State in the second round. Dylan Sampson, who got out of Tennessee, who's a burner in the fourth round. Those are really going to be your running backs of the future in this room. Judkins is a big, powerful north-south runner. He's got good athleticism. I think he was a really nice selection in the second round. Sampson's that really nice change of pace, speed back type of thing. I don't think he's great between the tackles, but if you get him out in space, he is absolutely a guy that can turn on the jets and run. So I think this Browns running back room has some upside, but they just need to prove that they can do it at the NFL level as well. Next up, wide receiver. I think this is very clearly the Cincinnati Bengals at number 1. I think you have arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL in Jamar Chase. Won the Triple Crown last year, was incredibly dominant for the entirety of the season. You go ahead and re-sign T. Higgins as well. Most people didn't think they were going to be able to do both. So, the fact that you get T. Higgins back on this contract long term, he's one of the best number 2s in the league. Such a good contested catch weapon. Really turned it on late in the season as well. I think his route running is incredibly underrated. He's a borderline, top 15 wide receiver in the NFL, and he's their number 2 option. Andre Iosivas also has emerged as a nice red zone threat. Jermaine Burton reportedly has matured a lot this offseason. I'll believe it when I see it. But if you can get anything out of him, he's got really great talent. He just has not been able to put things together off the field. So we'll be able to see, maybe he can emerge as a nice speed deep option for them as well. I think that would really unlock another dimension of this wide receiver room. They've just got a lot of talent in this room. Charlie Jones is a good punt returner as well. So they've got talent in this room. I think that's very clearly number 1 in this division. Then we're going to go with the Baltimore Ravens up next. I think a lot of people might put the Steelers next because DK Metcalf, I think you could absolutely argue, is probably the 3rd best wide receiver in this division behind the 2 top ones for the Bengals. But I do think that the culmination of Zay Flowers, who I really don't think is significantly worse than DK Metcalf at all. They do different things, but I think Flowers is a really explosive option. Rashad Bateman and then DeAndre Hopkins as well. And I also like some of the depth. Tylan Wallace, Devontae Walker, LaJohntay Webster. There's some guys in this wide receiver room who I do think have some talent. The top 3 guys you feel really nice about. You've got your contested catch ball winner in Hopkins. You've got your separator and kind of yak weapon in Zay Flowers and your separator in Rashad Bateman. None of those guys are elite, number 1 true dominant wide receivers, but I think you have a really nice collection of skill sets and guys that complement each other really well, and it's a good weapon group for the Baltimore Ravens at wide receiver. Then we're going to go to the Steelers next. I like DK Metcalf, but I don't think that he's this $30 million wide receiver type of guy. He is really not that good at contested catch opportunities for as big and fast, as dominant as he is. Don't think he high points the ball incredibly well. I think him playing with Aaron Rodgers is going to be an interesting dynamic, but I think if you had him and Pickens, I could get more behind this room. I think Pickens is a head case, but there's just not a lot of talent in this wide receiver room outside of Metcalf now at this point, who you're paying a ton of money to. You've got Calvin Austin, who is fine as a separator. Robert Woods. Roman Wilson is kind of the wild card there. He's a 3rd-round pick from Michigan. Pretty much missed most of last season due to injury. You have other guys like Ben Skoranek, stuff like that. But you're relying on Calvin Austin, Robert Woods, Roman Wilson, some of those guys to step up and be, secondary weapons to DK Metcalf, and I just don't think that's a great strategy. I don't think any of those guys are great. So Metcalf is a solid 1B type receiver, but I just don't like the other depth that they have in this room. Then the Browns up last year. Jerry Jeudy kind of is a very up and down player. When he's on, he's a really good wide receiver. He's a good separator. There's just moments where he kind of disappears. He's not quite as good as he should be based on his talent level. And then there's just not a ton else in this room. Cedric Tillman, I did like coming out of Tennessee. He's a nice ball winner. I think he'll have opportunities. Jamari Thrash, DeAndre Carter, Deontay Johnson is a giant wild card. There's just not a lot here in this room behind Jerry Jeudy and maybe Cedric Tillman if he can take that next step. I think you're just relying on a lot of young guys, and I think Jeudy is just a little too inconsistent to be ranked, much higher than number 4 here for the Browns. Then at tight end, this was a little bit of a tough one as well, but I'm going to go with the Ravens. I know Mark Andrews definitely didn't have a great postseason. He was a little bit worse than he typically is in the regular season, but I still think he's a good player. I think people underrate how good of a receiver he still is. And then Isaiah Likely has really kind of taken the reins as the tight end too, been a really good player for them. And I still really like the depth in this room as well. Charlie Kolar, I think, is a really, really good tight end 3. I think he'd be a tight end 2 on most teams. He's a really good player. So that culmination of Andrews, who's still good, even if he's maybe slowing down a little bit. Isaiah Likely is one of the best tight end 2s in the NFL. Charlie Kolar is one of the best tight end 3s in the NFL. I think you have to give this to the Baltimore Ravens at number 1 here. Then we have the Cleveland Browns at number 2. Finally, they're not ranked number 4. David Njoku is a really nice option. I think he's a little bit up and down here and there, but I think his ability to go up, make contested catches, get open in the receiving game. You also have Harold Fannin, who I thought was a really nice pick in the 3rd round. He's a very unique player because he's a guy that is probably not going to be able to line up as an inline player too often. He's small, he's light, but he broke tons of records at Bowling Green. I'm very curious to see how he translates to the NFL because he's a really good receiver and he's good with the ball in his hands as well. Other than that, don't have a ton in this room, but those 2 guys are definitely very interesting. Then for the Steelers up at number 3, you have Pat Freiermuth, who I think is kind of the most just like prototypical fine tight end 1. There's nothing wrong with Pat Freiermuth. I think he's good at getting open over the middle of the field, being a nice check down option, turning 4-yard gains into 8-yard gains. I think he just is good at recognizing where to settle in zones, stuff like that. Darnell Washington definitely hasn't turned into this crazy dominant physical freak like a lot of people thought, but he's still a good run blocker. I think he has some talent. He just hasn't really put it all together yet. And I just think there's not a dynamic ability to this tight end room, but it is a solid group. And then we have the Bengals at number 4. This is mostly just because Mike Gesicki isn't really a true tight end. He's a big slot wide receiver, basically. I think he's a really solid receiver. He can high point the ball. He gets open. He's athletic. Outside of that, though, when you're looking at your inline guys, Drew Sample is just a blocking tight end. He's pretty much nothing more than that, but he is a good blocker. Eric All, unfortunately, is out for this entire season. Their 4th-round pick from last year was really looking good. They started running a lot more 12 personnel to get him on the field. He's a good blocker. He's athletic, but unfortunately, he got injured last season, had complications with kind of recovery, and is going to miss all of this upcoming season as well. That was kind of the bill on him coming out of Iowa, so unfortunately, we're just not quite sure what we're going to get out of Eric All in the future as well. But you also have other guys, Tanner Hudson, Tanner McLaughlin, Cam Grandy. Those guys all played, and they kind of use a lot of variation of this tight end room. They like to get a lot of these guys in there, and there's differing skill sets, but none of them are particularly dynamic or interesting, besides Gesicki, who really isn't even a tight end. He's a big wide receiver. So, that is what puts them at number 4 in this tight end ranking. Next up, the offensive line. I don't know that any of these 4 teams feel great about their spots on the offensive line. I don't think they're bad groups necessarily, but you do have some question marks kind of across the board for all 4 of these teams. I think the Ravens probably have the least, but that's still not great. Ronnie Stanley has dealt with a ton of injuries. He's back at left tackle, played really well last season. You do get Joseph Noteboom to back him up, which I think is a really solid kind of swing tackle option. Your other guys on guard spots, Andrew Voorhees, Daniel Falele. I think both of those guys are young players. They had lots of ups and downs when they did play, especially Falele. I think there were moments that he looked big and dominant, but also other times that he lost quickly and didn't have the foot speed. Tyler Linderbaum is a really good center. You feel pretty good about Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. Started off a little bit rough, but he definitely kind of got things together a bit more as well. You also drafted Emory Jones in the 3rd round, who is athletic. He's probably going to be best at guard, played right tackle at college, so it'd be interesting to kind of see where he fits as well. But I think this offensive line has decent depth. You feel fine about the starters. There's no giant weak links or giant gaping holes, and that's kind of the best of the best in this division. So we have the Ravens at number 1 for the offensive line. Then up next, we're going to go with the Browns. This group kind of was dominant for a while, and then they got old and injured pretty quickly. And I think that's still something that they're struggling with, especially on the interior here. Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, when they're healthy, and a couple of years ago, they were the best guard tandem in the NFL. They're just both kind of getting up there in age. They're often injured. So it's just question marks there. You have Zach Zinter and now Tevin Jenkins, namely, to back him up. That is huge to get a guy like Tevin Jenkins, who, I think would be a starting caliber player if he wasn't injured all the time. But you kind of get him as a depth piece in here, and I think that's a huge signing for this team that has dealt with some injuries and has had to play some pretty bad offensive linemen because of that. I think getting somebody like Tevin Jenkins is big. You have Ethan Pochich at center, who is a really solid player. At right tackle, Jack Conklin is solid when he plays. I think he's a little bit on the decline. He's getting older, but he's often injured as well. Like I said, this offensive line is just old and injury prone. But you do bring in Cornelius Lucas, who is a pretty solid swing tackle to be the backup there. Then at left tackle, I think you have probably the most question marks. Jedrick Wills left the team. He's taking the year off to recover, basically. You have DeJuan Jones at left tackle, ready to start. He was right tackle at Ohio State. I think he's very up and down. Sometimes he just engulfs guys. Other times he just does not have the foot speed to hang with guys. So I think that's your weak link. The tackles are definitely a little scary. Some of the injuries you've dealt with. But overall, if everybody's healthy and with some of the depth they've added, I still think this Browns group is pretty good. Then we have the Pittsburgh Steelers up next. I think this team has some really good young talent on the offensive line, but there's definitely question marks. You have Broderick Jones at left tackle. He has looked very up and down. I think if you have a question mark, it's probably him right now because he just hasn't looked great when he's played. They've moved him around a lot between left and right tackle. You're hoping for the best with him, but we'll see. I think that you could probably have some question marks about him at left tackle with Dan Moore Jr. leaving. You have Isaac Seumalo and Mason McCormick at guards. Seumalo's a really solid player. McCormick, a young player, I thought he played pretty decently. Same with Zach Frazier. He was really good when he was out there at the center from West Virginia in his rookie season. Looked pretty good at center. Then you have Troy Fautanu at right tackle. Missed the entirety of his rookie season due to injury, but I thought highly of him. I don't see any reason that he's not going to get in there and be a solid player, though I'm sure he will take his losses early. But I think this is a young group. It has the potential to ascend to a really nice, league average, maybe even top 10, top 12 type of group. But I think they're not quite there yet. It's just young and unproven at this point. So we'll see how the Steelers develop that group. And then at number 4, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. This offensive line has been a problem for as long as Joe Burrow has been at the league at the very least. Orlando Brown was dealing with a lot of injuries last season. I thought he was still pretty good when he was fully healthy and playing. Amarius Mims on the other side, I thought had a really nice rookie season. Yes, he took his losses, but he was coming in as a raw, inexperienced type of player, and I thought his athleticism, his length, his power was certainly on display. I do think he'll ascend into a really nice right tackle for them. Ted Karras is the leader of this group on the interior at center. He's a good player, even though he is getting up there a little bit in age. He's a good player. And then the guard spot is the major area of concern. Alex Kappa and Cordell Volson were atrocious for this team last season. Volson's still on the roster. Kappa got cut. So you're bringing Dylan Fairchild in the 3rd round, who is a raw player, but I do think he's a good pass protector. I think he's got decent movement ability and could step into that left guard spot and be a decent player. And then at right guard, you're probably starting Lucas Patrick or Cody Ford. Don't feel great about either one of those guys. They're both perfectly fine depth options, and Lucas Patrick looked okay at guard for the Saints last season, but it's just not great to have those guys as starters. Do bring in Jalen Rivers, a guy that, I think could be a nice swing tackle, somebody that can play a lot of different spots. Volson's still on this roster. A guy Jackson Kirkland, an undrafted free agent a few years ago. I think this team has decent high hopes for him, but it's just not a great group. I think the guard spots are just huge question marks, so that's what's going to put the Bengals at number 4 here. Moving to the edge rush position, this is very controversial because these teams have really good edge rushers in this division. I'm going to go with the Steelers at number 1. However, I think I'm going to make both Steelers and Browns fans mad because I think that the Steelers have the best edge group when you take the culmination of all of these guys. Alex Highsmith, you also have, of course, TJ Watt, Jack Sawyer, Nick Herbig. This is a really good, deep group. Highsmith, I think, is a really good number 2. Watt is great when he's healthy. Herbig's a great number 3. But I think Myles Garrett is pretty easily the best edge rusher in this division. He just gets double teams consistently. He's so good against the run and the pass. He's so dominant. I just think that while Myles Garrett doesn't have the running mates of, TJ Watt, he's healthier, he's more available. I think he's just more dominant as a player overall. The problem is Isaiah McGuire, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Alex Wright are the guys playing opposite of Myles Garrett. So that's why they are below the Steelers here. Then we're going to go with the Bengals. This group is a huge question mark because of Trey Hendrickson's contract situation. They still haven't worked it out as of yet. Shamar Stewart's not practicing because of his rookie deal. The Bengals front office is absolutely incompetent. No new news there. But outside of that, you have some other guys. Cam Sample's coming back from injury. Joseph Osai was looking better at the end of last season. You have decent players. Miles Murphy, of course, a first-round pick a couple years ago, just really hasn't developed. There's talent on this defensive line and this edge group, but there's a lot of question marks. Shamar Stewart's an incredibly raw player. Miles Murphy, kind of the same thing. The depth is solid in this room. Cedric Johnson showed some decent flashes as well, but there's definitely big-time question marks, and the biggest of them all is Trey Hendrickson, and if he's going to be playing for this team. If not, I think this group is number 4 in this division. But for now, we will put the Ravens at number 4. This is a solid group. It allows the Ravens to do what they want. I think that their defensive schemes are really good, so that certainly helps. You have Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, Mike Green, an explosive player out of Marshall who only dropped due to off-the-field concerns, so if that works out, then I think he's going to be a really good player talent-wise. So you'll have David Ojabo, Adisa Isaac. There's athletic guys in this room and guys with a lot of talent, but I think you have to put them at number 4 when, 3 of the top 7 or so edge rushers in the NFL are in this division. The one team without one of those guys is probably going to be at number 4. For the interior of the defensive line, I think this is the Steelers. Cam Hayward was excellent for this team last year. He's old, but he is still getting the job done. And then you have Keanu Benton, who I really like. I think he's a really solid second-round pick a couple of years ago. Then you have Derek Harbin, who's a great pass rusher. He can generate pressures. He's a really good guy on the inside to just create disruption. I think the Steelers' interior group is nasty, one of the best in the league, and they're definitely going to rank at number 1 in this division. The Ravens also have a really good group. You have Madubuike, of course. Travis Jones is a big hulking nose tackle. Broderick Washington. You have some other guys. John Jenkins, Aeneas Peebles came over from Virginia Tech in the 6th round of the draft. I think he's a interesting pass rushing type player, even though he is a bit undersized. I think you have good starters and some interesting depth in this group. Madubuike, Travis Jones, both really good players at their respective positions. And then we have the Cleveland Browns up next. I think you're definitely excited about Mason Graham and what he can be for this team. You bring in Malik Collins as well, Mike Hall in the 2nd round. We'll see on that one, but this kind of starts and ends with Mason Graham and how good we think he can potentially be. I think he is a little bit undersized and doesn't have great length, but his ability to hold up against double teams, stop the run, win quickly when he does win, I think that is definitely something to be excited about for Browns fans. Then the Cincinnati Bengals, easily number 4 in this group. This interior defensive line is pretty trash. You have BJ Hill, who's a fine starter. TJ Slayton, who signed in free agency, who's a fine nose tackle, run stuffer, but he cannot rush the passer. McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, both 2nd and 3rd round picks last year. Didn't show a lot in their rookie seasons, but they're going to be asked to take on a pretty big role in this defense. There's nobody that can rush the passer in this group. You don't really have any great starters. BJ Hill's a fine starter. Slayton's a okay nose tackle. So it's just not a great group. It's going to be another area of weakness for this Bengals defense. So we're going to put them at number 4. For the linebacker, we are going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. Roquan Smith maybe took a slight step back last season, but he's still one of the best in the league. Trenton Simpson, I thought, was a really nice pick a couple years ago. I think he's kind of turning things on and developing well. Teddy Buchanan, to get him in the 4th round, I think was a good selection. It's a fine group. I mean, it's Roquan Smith and then some other guys who I think can make some plays, have a little bit of talent. It pretty much starts and ends with how good Roquan Smith is, though, for this defense. as that Mike linebacker. And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals up next. I think some people would be surprised that the Bengals are above the Steelers in this regard, but I think Logan Wilson is incredibly underrated. He's one of the best, true Mike linebackers in the league as a playmaker. He's a really good run defender. I think he has good coverage instincts. He was playing behind a terrible defensive line with a pretty awful linebacker partner next to him around a horrible defense. And the play calling was not great either for the Bengals. So I think Logan Wilson had a lot going for him, and then he got injured before last season. But before that, he was one of the easily, I think, top 10 linebackers in the NFL. You're getting rid of Jermaine Pratt. He's still on this roster, but he will be cut or traded before the season starts. And then you have Demetrius Knight Jr., who I think was definitely an overdraft, but he's a smart, heady guy. He's a good run defender. He can run and chase. Oren Burks was really solid for Philadelphia on their Super Bowl run last year. And then you draft Barrett Carter, a really athletic freak linebacker in the 4th round as well. So they've invested kind of a lot into this linebacker room over this offseason. And I think Logan Wilson is a top 12 linebacker in the NFL. So that's what puts the Bengals at number 2. And then we do have the Steelers at number 3. Patrick Queen, I think, is a bit overrated, if I'm going to be completely honest. I think he's a good run and chase athletic freak at linebacker, but I don't think he's this guy who's this dominant number 1 alpha guy. I think his instincts are still pretty questionable. But I do like his athleticism, and I was really impressed by Peyton Wilson as well. The question was never really, is Peyton Wilson a good player? It's that he was, an old prospect that had serious injury questions. But I think you have those two guys are really solid starters at linebacker. You're not majorly concerned there. You have Malik Harrison. You have Cole Holcomb, who I think is a decent player as well. So this group is definitely not a liability. I just don't think, in my personal opinion, Patrick Queen is quite as good as some people say. And then the Browns at number 4. Unfortunate because Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is really, really good when he does play, but he is out and, dealing with a lot of injuries. We don't even know if he's going to be able to play again. That just sucks because he's a great player. Carson Schlesinger, I think, is going to be a solid player for them as a second-round pick, but outside of that, he's unproven, and you have Jordan Hicks and Jerome Baker, and this room gets pretty rough pretty quickly. So the Browns, not truly all their fault, but they are pretty easily going to be number 4 here in the linebacker rankings. Moving to corner next, I'm going to go with the Ravens at number 1 for corner. Marlon Humphrey is a dog, and he absolutely can play in the slot. He can move around. He can be a really nice, versatile piece for you. He's a good number 1 true corner, and those are hard to find. I love the depth in this room, though. I think they have done such a good job. Nate Wiggins started off a little bit slow, but he really, really came on and was excellent as a rookie. You have TJ Tampa, who I was a fan of. You drafted Bilal Cohn in the 6th round this year. He was my guy for sure in the draft. Really liked him. Jadobi Awuzie definitely has slowed down a bit, but he's here as another corner option. I like this group a lot. Jalen Armour-Davis has played a bit. This is a good group with high-end talent at the top. I think Wiggins and Humphrey are great starters. You also have to factor in a little bit. Kyle Hamilton plays a lot of slot, and I think, he's really, really good in that role. And you have good depth across the board as well. I think this is a really well-constructed cornerback room for the Ravens. Then we're going to go with the Cleveland Browns at number 2. I think that they have good players. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. Martin Emerson definitely is a bit of an up-and-down player. He's big, he's physical, but he definitely loses often sometimes. Other games he's completely shut down. I think Denzel Ward's still incredibly underrated. When he's healthy, he's one of the best corners in the league. He's great. And then Greg Newsome is a solid slot corner as well. So this is a good group. It's got a good variation of kind of the 3 types of corners that you would want. Big physical, really good instinctual smart corner in Denzel Ward, and a slot player in Greg Newsome. So it can be a bit of an up and down group due to injuries and Emerson's play, but I think it is well constructed. And then up next, I put the Steelers at number 3. And I'll be honest, I went back and forth between them and the Bengals a bit because Joey Porter Jr. is such a streaky player. He is flagged constantly. He's a bump and run dude. And I mean, he's aggressive, he's physical, and that eats up a lot of wide receivers, and they can't hang with him physically. But if he matches up against a guy that can beat him off the press or match up with his physicality, I don't think he's great at truly stopping the wide receiver from getting the ball and squeezing on routes quickly. I think he is just a big physical guy, and he's a very, very up and down player because of that. You have Darius Slay at the other corner position. He's fine. I mean, he's old for sure, but he still played pretty well for Philadelphia last season. You have Beanie Bishop at the nickel, who's fine. I mean, I don't think he's a great player, but he's okay in that regard, especially for an undrafted pickup. You have Brandon Eccles, Corey Trice, who's talented, but just can't stay healthy. It's not a great group, and I think that the number one corner is up and down, but the Steelers have some guys in this room. The Bengals, I think, easily could overpass them, and it's just a giant question mark because there's a lot of dudes in this room that have played up and down or have missed time due to injuries. I think this group is interesting for the Bengals. Dax Hill played nickel corner at Michigan. They moved him to safety. He ended up moving to outside corner and started off a little bit slow, but really kind of came on and then got injured and missed the rest of the season. DJ Turner was really starting to emerge. He seemed like he was a really good coverage corner, starting to figure things out. He got injured. Cam Taylor-Britt, the number one corner for this team coming into the season, was horrible for the first third of the season. He was absolutely atrocious. And then he started figuring things out a little bit more towards the end of the season. But it's hard to know what kind of guy are you getting from him. He's confident, he's talented, but, the first 6 weeks of the season or so, maybe 8 weeks of the season, I mean, he was awful. He got benched, he was unplayable. But, there is some talent there, and he started to figure things out. Josh Newton, a fifth-round pick from a year ago, he played decently in some decent action that he got. You have guys, DJ Ivey is kind of that tight end eraser type player. Marco Wilson is on this team as well. There's a lot of talent in this group, but it's just big time question marks across the board. I think they could easily climb up these rankings because of how good, in theory, this room could be, but I also think they could be awful again, so that's why we're going to put them at number 4. The safety room, I think this is very, very clearly the Ravens at number 1. This group for the Baltimore Ravens is awesome. Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks, who you bring in as well. This group is really good. There's not a ton of depth with Washington getting hurt, but Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks are awesome players for this team. I think they're going to be one of the best safety duos in the NFL. Hamilton's great. Malachi Starks, I think, was a good first-round selection as well. So I think it's very clearly the Ravens at number 1 here. Then we're going to go the Steelers at number 2. I don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick is still one of the absolute best of the best safeties in the league, but he's still a good player. You have him and Deshaun Elliott, Miles Killebrew, Juan Thornhill. It's a solid group. And Minkah Fitzpatrick is still very good. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's, an elite top 3 safety in the NFL like he once was. I think Kyle Hamilton is much closer to that. So the Steelers, I think, are comfortable in that number 2 slot. Definitely don't feel bad about any of their guys. I just don't think they match up with the Ravens. Then we have the Browns up next. This Browns group is very up and down. Grant Delpit and Ronnie Hickman, I think, are fine players. You brought in some more depth. Jamonte Casey, Rayshon Jenkins. Delpit, I think, in particular, is talented, but he is a little bit streaky. They've dealt with some injuries in this room, so it's not a great group, but I do think there is some talent here. And then the Cincinnati Bengals at number 4. Geno Stone was horrific for this team for, again, the first 12 weeks of the season or so. Definitely was better in the last couple games of the season, but we'll see what version of Geno Stone you're getting. Jordan Battle's been okay as well. He's not great, but he's all right. I thought they'd attack this room a lot more. They really didn't. You have Dejon Anthony, Tyson Anderson. There's not much here. I think the Bengals are clearly number 4 in this group. Then moving to coaching, this is a little bit tough because, you have good coaches in this division for sure. I'm going to put John Harbaugh at number 1. I think he's consistently built a really good winning culture. He's gone deeper into the postseason than Mike Tomlin recently, who we're going to have at number 2. Harbaugh and Tomlin are very similar. They have great cultures. They have very consistently good teams. I think they have good talents they build around, and then they get the most out of the players on their roster. I think Harbaugh has just had more recent success. I think he's better at hiring coordinators and staff under him right now. With Tomlin, yes, it's great. He's never had a losing season, but at some point, winning 9 or 10 games and then getting slaughtered in the wild card round is not really that much better than winning 8 games or 7 games. So credit where it's due for overperforming with some not that great rosters recently, but at some point, postseason success does matter, which is why Zach Taylor is going to be number 3. Has had some postseason success, went to a Super Bowl. Yes, that was quite a while ago. And, he has got to get this out golden hire right. But I think that if the defense can get a little bit more simplified, if they can get the 20th best defense in the NFL, this team could absolutely make the playoffs, be a contender. But you never know, because they start 0-3 every single season and dig themselves into a giant hole that they only sometimes can dig out of. Stefanski, I think, is a really good play caller. I don't know that he's really been able to overcome just the Browns being the Browns and the culture that comes with that. I think he's firmly on the hot seat. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll absolutely get another coordinator job if he gets fired, but I think you have to put him at number 4 based on how rough the past couple of seasons have been in Cleveland. Whether that's his fault or not, we're going to put him at number 4. So that is my, divisional rankings here. Let me know your thoughts. What teams do I have too high or too low for each position group? Let me know your rankings down below. If you like this kind of content, please hit that like button. While you're down there, hit the subscribe button as well. Both of those just free and easy ways to support the channel. Planning on doing these for all 8 divisions in the NFL, so let me know what division I should do next. Thank you for watching. I will catch you in the next one.